Hello, dear viewers and listeners. Welcome to the latest episode of Extra Extra. It's all about whiskey. I remain your host, Jason Johnson Yellen. He remains Joshua Morrissey Hatton. Hello, Joshua Morrissey Hatton.
Would it make sense to you if I started singing like, "Get out of my dreams and into my car"? Right? Like it makes sense given I'm in a car right now.
I was trying to work out if there was a steering wheel in front of you or if you were a passenger in a moving vehicle.
I have a laptop sitting on my steering wheel. This is like perfectly, everything is positioned just right to make me look this bad.
I have a feeling that's what I normally say, but you've really carried it off with great aplomb today. It takes a lot of effort to look this poor. That's impressive, Joshua.
I appreciate the respect.
Well, fingers crossed the connectivity works for today's episode as well. With you in a moving car, driving with your feet on the steering wheel and typing with your ears. We'll see how today's episode goes.
It's just me and Fred Flintstone, you know?
So regular viewers, regular listeners know that we bring in a whiskey-related news story. We cover it. We highlight some key parts, some key quotes, and we have a good old riff, and we lay the state of the industry to bed by the end of every episode.
Every episode.
This week, this episode is going to be a bit different. We're actually responding to the very sad passing of Paul McDonagh, who made the Bon Accord in Glasgow what it is today. And today is July 18 that we are recording this. The episode is, of course, dropping July 19. And yesterday, July 17, it was announced on social media that Paul had passed. And I hadn't heard anything about his condition. I hadn't heard anything about him being in ill health for the last month, as viewers and listeners could tell by the emergence of Jess Lomas behind a mic, that I've been away, you've been away, Joshua, and the finger hasn't been on the pulse, but still, I was shocked yesterday when you delivered the news to me from social media. What was your take?
Yeah, well, interestingly, word passed on Facebook before it passed anywhere else. So as I was scrolling through my feed, and of course you don't have Facebook, so you will not have seen this, I saw our good friend David Stirk post about it. And then I did a little digging, and, another name that we knew popped up, and another name that we knew popped up. And it was just person after person after person, just either saying something like "R.I.P. Big Man" or having some sort of a remembrance. You've been out, I've been out. We haven't had our finger on the pulse. At the same time, we're on the other side of the pond. We're in a different country. And to be fair, I'm not sure how much Big Man really talked about what was going on. And I know there was something in the Scottish Herald this morning. I didn't get a chance to read it because I was in a car driving down to New Jersey. So I wasn't able to hear, how he passed, and maybe that information isn't divulged. It doesn't even matter. It's too early, whatever it is.
It's certainly not in the Herald Scotland article. They just did exactly what you're talking about there, which is it was a series of tributes, people who remembered him fondly. And that's what you and I wanted to spend today's extra doing, is actually remembering the man and celebrating and talking a little bit about, the the little part that he played in our success as well. So um, I know where I want to begin, but Joshua, when did you last see him, and when did you first meet him? Two ends of the spectrum there.
Two very different ends of the spectrum. So let's begin at the ending then. Sadly, the last time I saw him was just prior to COVID, and it
Yep.
will have been. I think it will have been December of 2019. I think I also went over in January of 2020. Yeah, I think so. So that would have been the last time. I know since he and I have shared some words on Facebook and Facebook Messenger, just, little, hey, how you doing? How's COVID doing? Because, the
Right.
bond was shut down just like everybody else was shut down forever. The fact that it even survived COVID was, a miracle in and of itself, and I'm sure it took a lot of effort.
Right.
So yeah, it would have been just before COVID, and then to my recollection, the first time I met him was with you and potentially Mike and Meg Andrews back in August 2011. I think it was my first
Oh,
trip
interesting.
to Scotland
Interesting.
with you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that even predates the kind of the launch of the company, as we've always talked about, established 2011, but launching memberships in 2012. So it was in that period between establishing and launching, which actually brings me around to the very first time, or an early memory that I wanted to share, which is he was already a renowned publican when we met him, and
Yeah.
the bond was on very strong legs. The McDonagh family have been in charge of the bond for 22 years as of 2023. So it takes us, depending how the calendar works out and the months work out, that puts them in charge of it around 2001, which actually coincides with me leaving Scotland to make a life in America.
Okay.
So I actually remember drinking at that end of Sauchiehall Street, that kind of proximity to the Mitchell Library, but I was never in the Bawn. The closest I got was 2 doors down from the Bawn. There used to be an internet cafe. And I remember going into the internet cafe with my buddy Francis.
Yeah.
After we'd been drinking at a bar on the end of Sauchiehall Street. The reason I'm not giving you a name is the bar changed its name every 2 or 3 years.
Oh.
And it really wasn't known for anything, and it would change ownership, it would become something else. So, where we drank on the end of Sauchiehall Street was not important at all. What is remarkable to me is we were that close to what would become the Bon Accord, that would really take off under the leadership, the guidance of Paul McDonagh. And then, as a chap who no longer lived in Scotland, every time I went back to Scotland and back to Glasgow, we would stay in the Hilton, that's diagonal from the Bon Accord. Like, that was our spot to be, because we would meet people there. We'd drink with Jess there, with Swede Scott there. We'd meet other friends there. People on their way to Fashil would go through there. It was the absolute spot to be. So, with that said, when you and I launched Single Cask Nation and moved into a world of whiskey and single cask releases, the idea was it would be incredible if we had a presence at the Bon Accord.
Yes.
If you could be in Glasgow and go to this globally renowned whiskey bar and saw a Single Cask Nation bottle on the shelf, holy moly, that would be a very early achievement. And when we approached Paul to do such a thing, he was all over the idea and more than happy to support us, and was our very first partner bar, when
Yep.
we launched a program where we could then add in other bars. Jack Rose then became 7 Grand in LA, and San Diego then became Barrel Thief in Seattle or Fremont, then became, all became partner bars after Paul McDonagh at the Bon Accord. So
Mm-hmm.
the dram, I know you're in a car and I would not expect you to be dramming even though we're remembering Paul
Glug,
McDonagh.
glug, glug.
The dram that I pulled off my shelf is, arguably the very first thing we sold to Paul McDonagh
Yes.
at the Bon
Yep.
Accord. It is our Kilchoman 4-year-old, bottled July of 2012. And his bar, Paul's bar, was the only place in Scotland you could get a dram of that. So it's with a dram of that on behalf of the two of us, Joshua, since one of us can safely dram right now, I say here's to Paul McDonagh.
Cheers. Cheers to that good man. So last night after my work day was done, which was about 9:30. So I take that back. Sometime before my work day was done. Maybe after you and I had our meeting, I decided to have a pour of something to remember him by, and like you, being at the Bond was so very special. And by being at the Bond, I don't just mean us there physically, but our bottlings, having single cask nation representation at that bar meant so much. And the feeling that I got with our bottles being there was very similar to the feeling I remember when you and I first went into New York and started selling into New York, and we were launching our retail range in 2017. We both had that song, if we can make it here, we can make it anywhere, New York. and I got the same feeling with Glasgow, or with the Bon in Glasgow, where it felt as if we're at the Bon, then we have a presence. Then we've made it in some way. And so yeah, he took us early on, and I couldn't find my bottle of Kilchoman, which was exactly the bottle that I went for. I couldn't find my bottle of Aaron 12-year-old with the Pinot Noir finish, but I did find our Glenmurray 12-year-old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, first fill bourbon, and that was bottled in August of 2012. So that was the first of two pours that I had in his honor. The second one wasn't single cask nation, but it's perhaps my favorite Ardnamurchan single cask, just heavily peated, sherried beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it hit more than I expected as the night went on.
Well, it's one of those things when you and I are going over from Scotland, and we're seeing people a couple of times a year, maybe 3 times a year when we're in Scotland. The times that you're not seeing them weigh heavy, right? I've obviously got, my mom is still there, my brother's still there.
Sure.
Dear friends are still there. When you go through that extended time not seeing them, it weighs heavy. And so for me, I saw Paul last May when I was over in Scotland, and you were unable to come over because you'd got a COVID diagnosis before you were able to get on a plane and come over. And it and getting to see Paul then and there, and always at the end of the bar, one of the things I absolutely love about the fella is if he hadn't seen us in the early part of the year, he always had our New Year drink ready for us, right? And so if we went in and placed an order for drinks, he'd say, those two are on me.
Yes.
That's your New Year. And that is incredibly classy. That is unbelievably classy.
Yeah. Just
and so getting to see him last year, he actually talked about Thomas, his son, his boy, taking over the Bon Accord, and Paul getting to spend more time in front of the bar and let the next generation take over.
Sure.
And I'd said to Thomas, your dad's still in here every night. He's still on the end of that bar every night. Maybe not every night. I don't want to tell stories, but he's often at the end of that bar. Yeah. And I said, is he gonna let you make this place yours? And Thomas said right away, no, I've already talked to him about the changes I'm going to make. And he's already signed off. He's already on board. He's not standing my way.
Amazing.
I'm not taking over his Bon Accord. I'm going to make his Bon Accord my Bon Accord. And I thought that was incredibly magnanimous as well, to be the dad. You and I are both dads,
Yeah.
If you can imagine handing something off to the kid, takes a lot to take a step back and say, you enact your ideas. Thomas is a grown man. He was 40 years old when he took over the keys to the Bon Accord.
Okay, I didn't know how old
he's not
he was.
18.
Okay.
He's not 21. He's 40 years old.
Yeah.
But that's still a big step when, like we're saying here, when you've built that up from 2001, you've won various accolades, various global awards, you're globally renowned. Here you go, son. Here's the keys. And he seemed to be adjusting to it quite well. So that was the last time I saw him. That was the last conversation I had with him. And so, we've lost Paul. We haven't lost the Bon Accord. Yeah. We've still got Thomas putting his own ideas in place there.
I have another remembrance of Paul, but just with the Bon in mind, like I really loved what you said. Paul may be gone, but the Bon is there. It's such a fixture, and there's that sort of glass cabinet back there, and we have your keeper's bottle back there, and Jess and Sweet Scott have bottles back there as well. There's always single cask nation representation, whether it's behind the bar or in that cabinet, and it's just nice to know that connection will go on. That feels special. But anyway, back to my remembrance. I remember in 2014, you and I went to the Bon. I think it may have been during a Whiskey Geek tour or something like that. It was a bit after your birthday. And we go into the Bon, and for some reason, and Paul is not the only one, for some reason, maybe it's how similar we look, maybe it's our accents, how similar those are. People get us confused a lot. And so Paul came up with this bottle of Old Pulteney 40-year-old. And he said, I heard you just turned 40. I want to give you a pour of this. And it happened so quickly, I didn't get a chance to say, oh, that was actually Jason who turned 40. I turned 40 last year. But you know what? So anyway, so I shared that. You, me, Jess, Sweet Scott, shared that with the four of us. And then he came back. Do you remember this? He came back with another bottle. He wanted to do just like a blind tasting or whatever. See if we could figure out the distillery, maybe the age. And it was like a 34-year-old Port Ellen. Just, here you go.
And he left the bottle on the table.
He left the bottle on the table. Yep. Yeah.
I think that was maybe the same trip with the same Whiskey Geek tour where Ben Weldy and Aaron Krause were sitting having pints and having a conversation. And I look over, and the two of them are behind the bar pouring pints.
Yes.
like how did we get here? Right? And Paul's in the middle of them and just showing them the ropes.
Yeah.
And I know he did that for tens of people and hundreds of people and maybe thousands of people. But I think he had the type of presence where I always felt like I was the first person he was doing that for.
Yes.
It never felt rote. It never felt scheming. It always felt like he saw people on that side of the bar and he wanted to show them this side of the bar. Or he wanted to make them feel like they'd come home, right? Which is exactly how, we felt when we went back to the Bon Accord, the multiple times we went back, the times we took Whiskey Geek tours in there, the times we had the veggie sausages in the giant Yorkshire pudding.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Oh,
With the mashed potato.
yes.
Which is, an incredible dish that Thomas took off the menu.
This is going to turn into a Thomas bashing episode. I hope not. No, we won't do that. We won't do that. I really feel for his family. Yes, he retired, but
for sure.
But he was not old, right?
I was just about to ask you that. I've got the answer if you don't, but what age do you think he was?
My guess is that he was in his early. If Thomas was 40, I would say early to mid 60s. Am I correct?
Yeah. He so his birthday is July 21st.
Oh,
and he would have turned 67 on his birthday.
There you go. Wow.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with Jess this morning when we were talking about Paul and saying, I remember being a kid and one of my papas was 74 when he passed. And it felt like, that's a good grandpa age. It seems all right. My other papa passed when he was 64.
Oof.
And I remember my mom just being distraught, absolutely at her wit's end. And 64, was a young man. And to hear coming 67 for Paul, that's a young man. That's not a grandpa age. That's not a papa age, and even as we're living here in 2023, those ages are moving along a little bit.
Yeah.
A papa age now is late 70s. My kids have got grandmothers who are 78 and 81 and still going strong. It's 67 is a small number.
Yeah,
as two chaps who are looking 50 square in the face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was thinking too, there's the connection with Paul. There's also a connection to Haida back in 2019 when I was inducted into the Keepers. I brought Haida out with me, and we made sure to go to the Bon, and she got to meet Paul. And when I told her the news, because I said, I've got to pour some whiskey tonight, and some of the viewers and listeners will know this. I'm really limiting my alcohol intake to maybe a couple drinks a week, something like that, trying to lose some weight. And I said to Haida, I've got to pour a whiskey tonight. And she gave me that look like, it's not drink night. What are you doing? And I said, nah, Paul McDonagh from the Bon passed. And she's like, oh, right. Yes. Okay. Do that. Pour. Yeah. Yeah.
Without doubt, without any shadow of a doubt.
It seemed to be the Bon was one of those places too. Again, back I mentioned Whiskey Geek Tours, where that was the place we would always take people. That was the place we would always bump into David Stirk. He wasn't on our tours, but he would come up and he would hang with us. He'd hang out with the tour guests. Yeah, it's the place, right? You're in Scotland, you're in Glasgow. It's the place.
Right. There's a story that you should tell because you'll remember it better than me because you were on the floor. Do you remember the second Whiskey Jubilee New York City and who showed up amongst the punters?
That's
in
right.
full kilt.
In full kilt. He was like the second. He was the one Scotsman on the other side of the table in a sea of black hats and beards, and it was just his sporran just glinting, the metal on it just glinting, and he came up with a big smile on his face. Like, what a guy that he would come out and support our event. Wow, I completely forgot about that. That's amazing.
That was remarkable. Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. All the times we talk about us going to Glasgow, us going to the Bon, us seeing Paul at the end of the bar, us chatting with him there. But he did come out to New York City and he did support a Jubilee. And that meant the absolute world. It also meant the world to him to be a partner bar of Single Cask Nation. And I think coming out to New York for the Jubilee kind of demonstrated what being in business with us meant to him. We knew what it looked like, what it meant to us. To see that reciprocated from him was remarkable. Absolutely not a thing he had to do. Absolutely not a thing that we expected of him. But what a mensch. Like, what an incredible mensch to come out and do that and support us and pour him a dram in New York City. I was thinking about that this morning, just smiling. That was a real good one.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I've got one. I've got one last one for.
Yeah,
just one more for you,
please.
And this was, I made a Facebook post yesterday, just toasting to him with the Glen Murray, and one of the thoughts that came to my mind was, he's one of these guys that's synonymous with Scotch whiskey, right? It's like that's where you go to drink your single malt, right? And I think of Scotland, I think of Scotch whiskey. He's going to come to mind. But I recall early on, he had brought in some bottles of our first 2-year-old Catoctin Creek from the white wine cask. And I remember thinking, man, this 2-year-old rye at like 60 million% alcohol, whatever it was, like, this is one that I'm glad he brought it in, but I don't think he'll appreciate it. I just don't know if it'll be something that will float his boat. And it floored him, and he showed it to the Bon Accord Whiskey Club, and that became like the highlighted pour. And to know that he got out of what I just assumed was his comfort zone to say, man, this is really special. I've got to highlight this with my group. It was one of those things. It was that validation, right? This well-respected whiskey guy also digging our American stuff and showing it to as many people as he can. Just really, again, if you can make it there, it's one of those things. So I think about that every once in a while too.
Well, and to add on to that as well, you mentioned the glass cabinet that's the Keys Club that sits at the front
that's it.
of the Bon Accord. And the first thing Jess and Chris Swedescott put in there was our Westland 2-year-old. Now, there's a glass cabinet of well-aged Scotchies, and whatever went in the cabinet had to get approval from Paul. And Jess and Swedescott put the Westland 2 in front of Paul for approval, and he signed off on it. That level of support there to get that in the glass cabinet, surrounded by a host of remarkable pours. Traditionally aged whiskey, aged Scotchies and single malts at that. But there was our little Westland poking out, courtesy of Jess and Chris, but also signed off on by the big man. The final part I wanted to add is he was also instrumental in putting together Glasgow's whiskey festival, along with our good friend Mark.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
excuse me, and Julie Hamilton, who came along there as well. But there's a festival, right? There's twice a year. It grew to twice a year. It was
Okay.
two
Yeah.
sessions on the day it was held. Very well supported by brands. I had the honor of pouring there with Jess in November of 2019 when we were launching our ROW, our Rest of the World line.
Yes. Yep.
That was a great place to be, great place to feel supported. And one of the things that we talked about before we launched ROW is I'm born and raised in Ayr, just 35 minutes southwest of Glasgow. Having a presence in Glasgow, standing on my own 2 feet in Glasgow, pouring our whiskies, pouring our selections, pouring our independent bottling brand, like incredible thrill, absolutely remarkable. And to know that it sat in the Bon in a couple of spots, to know it was represented at Glasgow's Whiskey Festival, was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And so just to reiterate, the level of support we experienced from Paul McDonagh was absolutely remarkable. The fact he enjoyed seeing us, whether we saw him in Glasgow or on the occasions we saw him in New York City, like a really remarkable chap. And in one of the tributes in the Herald Scotland, someone had said, Glasgow has lost a true gent. And I think that absolutely sums it up. He was a true gent. He was a mensch. He was incredibly supportive of our efforts. And he knew how thankful we were. We're not just saying this in remembrance. We were able to say this to his face. And we said it to his face many times, how much we appreciated his support.
Well, there you go. I think we can maybe end it there and pop up this banner for our viewers. Rest in peace, big man. Rest in peace, Paul.
Absolutely. And if I can add one more thing, if you're a viewer on YouTube and you were in the Bon and you experienced Paul McDonagh, drop a remembrance underneath here. If you're one of our many, many listeners, drop an email, info@singlecastnation.com or questions@onenationunderwhiskey.com, no E in whiskey. Share your remembrances of Paul as well. And we'd be happy to start the next episode by remembering Paul McDonagh and celebrating Paul McDonagh and continuing to appreciate what he has done for whiskey. Does that sound good, Joshua?
Sounds great to me. I think that's a perfect place to end this episode and in our remembrance. And I do look forward to hearing some stories. Some people have posted some of their remembrances up in our Single Cast Nation page. Some have posted some up on my own personal one. So yeah, it would just be great to hear, even if, hey, he poured me a beer. What a nice guy. Just be great to hear anything you have. So
absolutely.
All right, Jason. Well, you enjoy that.
All right. Well, we'll get out of here slightly different than we have been getting out of here. We're going to get out of here by saying cheers to Paul.
Cheers, Paul.